right, so we are up to day 138 of going through my old journal. The quote for today says, I am what I am, and what I am is a work in progress. And then it says, how are you a work in progress? Is there a specific area of your life that is under constant renovation? So if you're following along, just take a minute to think about how you would respond to this. And I will read what I wrote. Okay, I said I definitely feel like a work in progress, especially over the last couple of years. I feel like there's been a complete shift in how I view myself and the rest of the world. I said I experienced a similar shift back in 2011, 2012, but that shift was almost exclusively in how I viewed the world. Okay, so that one wasn't how I viewed myself, it was how I viewed the world. I said there wasn't much, if any, self-reflection during that time. I said, well, I feel like my progress has been consistent. It hasn't been constant. I feel like I progress in leaps and bounds with somewhat stagnant times in between. And it's been like a decade. It tends to go like in decades, I think. I said, I don't really like the stagnant times. I said, well, I don't know. When I'm busy, I look forward to the stagnant times, but once I'm stagnant for a couple of days, I get bored, restless, and ready to move on to the next thing. I'm always ready to move on to the next thing. And I put always in all caps. Even when I'm in the middle of working on something. I think this is why I've made small bits of progress in a lot of areas without most projects being fully completed. Even though this seems bad, I feel like it's actually for the best. Having time to step away seems to allow more clarity and better outcomes. And I put in parentheses, if it ever gets there, if it ever like reaches an outcome. So yeah. I don't know, maybe this is gonna be a short one. I don't really know how to expand on this. I feel like a broken record. I just keep saying like the same things over and over again. But yeah, I guess I'll talk about that shift in like 2010, 2012. How old was I then? I would have been like in my early 20s, early to mid 20s. And yeah, I talked a couple days back about how like Netflix and access to like different types of media kind of shifted my thinking on things. You know, before that, I would say I was just kind of, I don't know if this is the right word, but just kind of basic, you know, like I was, you know, I watched the same things that everybody else watched, and that was like my only worldview to be able to talk about things. And then I started like watching documentaries and learning about other things outside of kind of like my box that I was in. And, you know, it just kind of changed. Like you have this view of the world of how it is, and then, you know, sometimes you can expose yourself to different things and that view changes. And I think that's why like sometimes people will get into some of this stuff and their worldview gets shattered, and then they kind of go off in kind of a weird direction, like a conspiracy, you know, sometimes, like, because some conspiracies are true, like there's some truth in some of these conspiracies, and I think sometimes people will come to these things that are conspiracies or realize that they've been lied to about certain things, and then they just go off on this like everything is a lie, and like it kind of like they can't handle it, maybe some people. I get that, because I had a little bit of that. I was just like, oh my gosh, like the way we have our like medical system set up, and the, you know, the way the pharmaceutical industry works, and you know, you put your trust in like doctors and these like officials and these like levels of power, but then you know, sometimes you realize like, well, they're people and they have these other interests that are, you know, whatever. You get into kind of like that, a little bit of conspiracy, but you've got to watch, I think, to not get taken like too far into the conspiracy. But yeah, like that happened to me. Like what was it in particular that I was watching? Well, there was this one series in particular that got me, and this girl had kind of like suggested it to me, and it was the Zeitgeist series. And I can't find, like, I think the guy got in trouble for like using copyrighted stuff, and so I've tried to watch it, like rewatch it like a couple years ago, and it just didn't have the same effect because I think they made him take out like some of the music, some of the sounds, some of the clips and things that he had used to put this documentary together, and it didn't like come across as powerful to me as it did like the first time. But basically he was kind of like questioning some of these norms that we have. So like it was in 3 parts, and I think the first part was religion and like where did our religious views come from. And I think he's come back later and said this could be wrong, but I think he said he kind of regretted like putting the religious part in there because so many people got hung up on that because people hold such like strong views of religion that, you know, they couldn't look beyond that. And then there's like some 9/11 conspiracy stuff in there, you know, just kind of questioning the narrative of what you have. And like, here's the thing, if you look into the 9/11 stuff, like here's where I think things got messed up, because there were some like, I don't know if I want to say lies, but like, I don't know that we ever got the full view of like what happened on 9/11. And so sometimes I think it is easy for people to find kind of holes in the narrative that 9/11 was. And so, but then anybody who questions it is like, oh, you're just a conspiracy theorist. But I think there are some like legitimate questions to certain parts of what happened. And you know, so that's what I'm saying. Like, I think you can take parts of it and analyze it, like, without, like, believing the whole thing, but without saying that the whole thing, you know, is just, like, a huge conspiracy. And, so, yeah, the video, like, kind of brought up some of that, and that was the first time where I'm like, yeah, that is kind of weird. Like, why did they say this, and then this isn't, like, when you look into, like, facts, like, that wasn't true. And then, yeah, and then it gets into, like, our economic system. And I think that was the one that really, like, hit with me of, like, wait, like, our money really is kind of fake. And, like, it's kind of weird. And especially, like, right now, when you look into, like, what happened with, like, the stock market, like, you would think that, anyway, I'm not going to get too much into it. But, yeah, our economic system is kind of weird. And but yeah, it just got me thinking about things that I had never questioned before, starting to question some things a little bit deeper, I guess. So that was a big shift that I had, and kind of like questioning things a little bit more, and just not taking everything on its face that just someone puts out at you. But again, I think that gets into dangerous territory when you realize that some things weren't what you thought they were and what everybody thinks they are. And then, you know, you can take it to the whole other side of like not believing anything and saying anything that the government says, or anybody in anything that anyone in a position of power says is weird. Like, you can go like too far on the other side, I think. But yeah, so that was like 2010, 2011, 2012, and then 2020, 21, 22 was more like, instead of looking more deeply at the world and what's going on and things like that, like is what happened back then. Now it's more like looking more at myself and understanding myself. And so that's kind of what this is, like what this book kind of helped. I was already like on my way to this before I got to this journal. But I think this journal has kind of like helped me think through stuff a little bit more, and getting more like like the title of the journal is more introspective and thinking about what I think about things and what I think about myself. So yeah, it's still a progress. I don't know if it's gonna ever end. Like, what is life about? Like, are you just always progressing? Is there ever a time that you get to a point where you're like, all right, I'm good. I'm just gonna live like this. This is what it is, and I'm done. I'm ready to stop. I don't know. I don't know if I'll ever get there. I feel like as I'm getting older, though, especially over these last few years, I'm starting to get to a point to where I'm becoming a little bit more okay with things. Like, okay, well, this is what it is, and I'm ready to just kind of settle into what it is. Like, I don't constantly need to be going and going and going and moving forward. Let me just sit here and just be happy with the here and now. I can see that I'm starting to get there. So I don't know if I'll ever fully get there, but I don't know if it's even like a good place to be. I guess that's what I'm wondering. Are we supposed to constantly be progressing and always be progressing until the end of our lives? Or can we just get to a certain point and be like, all right, I'm here. This is good. I don't know. Anyway, that's what I have for that. And I'll be back tomorrow, day 139.